Good evening. I'm Marian McHugh, and welcome to Portland Rising, the monthly news, interview, and arts program produced by the New Portland Phoenix, the city's free and independent news weekly. Tonight, we're going to have a conversation about retail cannabis stores in Portland, which have sprouted since the first store opened in March of last year. Tonight, my guest is Jim Henry, owner of a couple of marijuana stores in Maine. I'm not sure exactly how many, but there's one in Portland. And the one we're going to be speaking of is at the former walk-in site at Morrill's Corner on Forest Avenue. Jim, thank you for joining us.
Marian, thank you for having me.
Right, thank you. How did you get involved in this business? What led you to it?
It's a great question. Thank you for asking, and thanks for having me. It's an interesting story to me, but I had spent 23 years in the high-tech world. I had been in software since I graduated university, and my closest connection to cannabis had been, I was a user of the product for years and very much enjoyed it prior to all of the doings of the past few years here in the state of Maine. But I have a very close friend who is a grower, and he's been a grower of medicinal products since the very beginning of the program here in Maine. It's a gentleman named Hughes Pope, and Hughes is very well known in the industry as a really a quality grower of cannabis, and someone who very much takes his organic approach to growing cannabis seriously. And a few years back, as the state was kind of ramping up towards adult use, obviously the state has a really long storied history with cannabis. First state to decriminalize, years in the medical program. He was a medical caregiver, and he really knew his craft. He was an artist. He is an artist. And he came to me one day and said, look, I would like to grow a business, but there are certain aspects of running a business that I just, don't have. I know how to grow really, really quality cannabis. And he brought me into his grow. And like I said, I was a user of the product. I consumed it. But I'd never been in a large scale commercial grow. And he brought me into his medicinal grow 3 or 4 years ago, and he showed it to me, and it was magnificent. It was magnificent. And he walked me through how his approach to growing cannabis was different. He was a real student of the game. And, it was funny, he learned over the years of trial and error, but, he would pick up books written in France from the 1970s about cannabis grow, and he was just a student of it. And when I heard him talk about how he approached the growing, and I saw his grow, it immediately struck me that this was something that the world really needed to have a broader experience of. His approach, his product, I really believed that the world had to have a much better exposure to what he was doing. And he came to me and said, look, I'd like to be able to grow this so that people can experience it and experience the way that we do it, but I just don't know how to grow a business. Can you help me do that? And not being a grower myself and not being the artist that he was, the only way that I knew that I could be a part of this and help him expose it to the world was to help him grow the business, which I had experience in. So it was a match made in heaven. And honestly, it was love at first sight when I saw what he was doing. And I felt like, look, I'm a Mainer. I born and bred. I had a little stint where I didn't live in the state of Maine, but I've been here the great majority of my 48 years on earth. And I love the state almost as much as I love anything else in the world. I'm so proud of it. And I think that the state is different than any other place in the whole world. And this was a product that was grown in the state that felt like Maine. And I knew that we needed to make sure that the masses could see it. So that's how I got into it.
So then you decided to start the business, and then you have 2 stores now, or more stores?
We have 2 adult use stores, and we have a medicinal store.
How does that does that work together okay? I mean,
Yeah, I
know
mean,
there's
look,
some-
our roots are in medicinal. Our roots are in medicinal. Our brand roots are in medicinal. Our support from our patients and customers is in the medicinal, and we're very, very committed to that world. We never envisioned that we would ever leave that world just because there was an opportunity elsewhere. The good thing about having both of these worlds, and I'm going to answer your question about how they work together. We have some staff that work on medicinal. We have some staff that work on adult use. We have some staff that work on both. And there are certain rules that you need to abide by. So as long as you know the rules, you're in a good spot. But the reason why we wanted to have both is because, like I said, we're very much a medicinal product. At the end of the day, even in the adult use world, the great majority of people that purchase cannabis are purchasing it for medicinal purposes. They identify as a medicinal user, even in the adult use world. We just had a conversation with one of the folks who works here.
Right.
I think she's behind the camera, but
Right.
she was talking about how, she's been to some of the adult use stores and it was for medicinal purposes. So we were never going to abandon being in that world. But the reason we went into adult use is we saw an opportunity for a lot more people to experience our product. There's 38 million people that come into the state every year. Texas comes into the state every year. Canada plus 2 million come into the state every year. Huge numbers of people that can experience what we do. And that only way to really do that in an effective manner was to be in the adult use program. We have in the state of Maine reciprocation with many states on a medicinal level. So if you have a card in New Hampshire, you have a card in Massachusetts, you have a card in New Jersey. But if you're in Pennsylvania and you have a card in Pennsylvania, you can't use that in the state of Maine. So if you're in Pennsylvania, you're coming here to go to Acadia National Park or the Sebago Lakes or the Belgrade Lakes in the summer, you can't purchase product until adult use came in a year and a half ago.
So a lot of your adult users are in fact using it for medicinal purposes.
Many people, the great majority of people that we talk to identify as medicinal users, regardless of what program they buy in.
In terms of your expectations for your business this past year, your first summer in operation, I guess, you had a lot of, you must have expected, of course, a lot of tourist trade, and I'm sure that played out. Was that what percentage was that of your business?
Look, we're in Maine. We're gonna get tourist traffic, and we had a huge summer because of the tourist traffic, and we're very, very excited about that. I used to work during the summer. I would go and work the doors at our stores because it's my favorite job at the company. I get to do a lot of things. I get to go in the grow, I get to go at the retail stores, and it's the blessing that I have that I get to do that on a regular basis. I get to experience so much. But easily my favorite job at the company is going and working the door because you get to meet people and they're so excited. Make no mistake, if someone's going into a cannabis store, they're usually in a pretty good mood. They're usually happy about where they're going to. Right. So it's really exciting to see these people, and the fact that it's brand new. The first summer, as you said, this is the first summer that in the state of Maine you could go buy legal cannabis without having a card. And that meant that on any given day that I would be in Portland or Waterville, I would see 16, 18, 20, sometimes upwards of 20 plus different licenses from different states. I would talk to folks from South Carolina, from California, from Oregon, from West Virginia, every state, red, blue, and it didn't matter, west, south, north, everybody came to come see the state. And I know why, because it's the greatest place in the world. But they came to our place, and I heard stories about this is the first time I've ever been in a dispensary in any state. I had one couple that came, and this woman is from South Carolina, and she was so excited. She told me she had just turned 63, I think, the week before, and it's the first time she'd ever been in a cannabis dispensary. And she was so excited, and she came in and she loaded up. She was going to Acadia National Park, and she'd heard a lot of good things about Sweet Dirt. It was really fun. But then the next day, I met a 21-year-old on her 21st birthday. She was coming in, and you get to meet all ages from all walks of life. But to answer your question, did the tourist aspect of the industry help us out? Certainly, it's Maine. But here's the fun part about this: we run and operate because of the locals. We have a lot of folks in both of our stores in adult use that are very much neighborhood folks. We're up in Morrill's Corner in Portland, and that is a neighborhood. The first people that contacted us when we started to redo the walk were the Friends of Morrill's Corner. Became friends with them. They came to our groundbreaking ceremony, came to our opening ceremony. And up in Waterville is very much a community that everybody knows everybody. It sounds trite, but I grew up in the 80s, so I liken it to Cheers. It's where everybody knows your name.
Right.
So I work up at the Bud Bar in Waterville, and everybody literally knows everybody's name on both sides. It's great.
So how many employees do you have in your whole operation?
In our whole operation,
Which includes the grow.
which includes the grow and manufacturing and G&A and everything. It's a great story. We were, I would say, at the end of 2000 and at the end of 2020, we were right around 28 or 29 employees. Today, we're just hovering around 140. So we've had
Wow.
massive employee growth, and it's across the board in every single group.
So, this would seem to be showing us that this industry in Maine is a growth industry, employing a lot of people. We know that, but your story is a strong aspect of, and here, of course, we had you on the
Who is that
cover
handsome
of the
guy?
old Phoenix, right?
Oh my goodness.
But there are,
Don't hold that up.
As an industry, as an industry, replicated among many stores, probably not as big operations. There's a lot of employees and a lot of
Yeah, there absolutely is.
taxes being generated.
Absolutely. Oh,
here.
the taxes, forget about it. Look, we're a small state, 1.3 million people. It's one of the oldest states in terms of population. That's getting better especially in some of the major markets like Portland. There's a really youthful community. And there's a lot of startup activity that's happening all around the state in all kinds of industry that's bringing in a much more diverse, in terms of age, in terms of background and ethnicity. There's a lot of more diversity that's happening in the state, but it's still Maine. We rely on tourism a great deal. And to your point, the tax revenue. I think that the final number in this state for 2021, the first calendar year, was something along the lines of $81 million. I think that's what it was. Don't quote me on that, but it's in that
Yeah, I'm not
area.
sure.
That was revenue. That means 10% of that went right straight to the state. So 8.1 if I'm right with that number. And that doesn't even include the excise tax. So when you grow the product and you take it from your cultivation facility out of the cultivation facility into manufacturing or retail, you automatically get it. There's another excise tax, which is equivalent of about a 10% sales tax as well, they figure. So there's considerable revenue coming from the state. Jobs, absolutely. The jobs are, and the fun thing about it is they're good jobs. These are jobs that people like to come to. They are people that are from the industry, that are not from the industry, that are young, that are older. There are from all walks of life, and they're loving it. And it's a really exciting place to be. We had a summer party this summer. It was actually in Falmouth, right up the road. And I had the opportunity to meet all the staff, and the team is just wonderful. And I had a great opportunity to meet everybody. And we were having a conversation that day, and I gave a couple words at the beginning, and I reminded everybody. I said, "Look, this is November, December of 1933. This is January 1934. Prohibition is just ending. It's just ended, and everyone here, you're going to get to tell your kids, your grandkids, your nieces, your nephews, your mentees, the people that you work with, you're going to get to brag that you were part of Prohibition ending. And that's really cool. You'll never get to say anything like that in your career again. You'll do some cool things in your career, but you'll never get to say it. So people are really excited about working in this industry. We have very good paying jobs. We have great benefits. It's not easy. This is a hard industry. The hardest industry out there. I guarantee you that. We can talk about that if you want, but
How is it hard?
let me count the ways. The legislative ground moves under your feet every day. The municipalities are all figuring out. They're getting their feet wet every day.
The city of Portland had a difficult time with.
I sat in more city council meetings than I care to count, and I went through, through the whole process. And look, it has to happen. And here's what the state did really well. The state, OMP, and the municipalities. Here's what they did really well: is they learned. The good news is a lot of states jumped into this. Out west, the Colorados, the Washingtons, the Oregons, the California, they jumped in early, right? And that's great. They got a lot of the early buzz, they got a lot of the early revenues for it, but they took a lot of the early challenges. And I remember going to Portland, for example, and I have sat in on dozens and dozens of planning board meetings and city council and select board meetings across the state. And I remember specifically one night in Portland, they were talking about the impending, the matrix in which they were going to be using before the vote happened in November. And I don't know if we can talk about that as well, but before the vote happened in November, where they got rid of the cap, they were talking about how they were going to do a merit-based approach to giving out licenses. And they were, the staff and the council were going back and forth in a dialogue about how they had used, I forget the name of the Colorado town, but there was a Colorado town that was maybe Littleton, but there was a Colorado town that was very similar in size and scope and all in the demographics that Portland had, and they went to that and they went to that town and saw how they rolled out their program, and I thought that was really something. It was really something. It really showed how these municipalities take it seriously, and you can see because of the numbers. There's 488 municipalities in the state of Maine, I think. There's 92, 95. The number is fluid, so forgive me and don't quote me on it, but there's 92, 95 that have opted into the program. That's another thing, is you have to opt into the adult use program. Of those 92, 93, 94, 95, whatever have opted in, I think there's 48 to 50 that are retail. So about 10% of the municipalities in the state of Maine. And there are some small municipalities that have done this. You look at the map, township number 1 in Piscataquis County has opted in, right? So and then there's Portland. So there's large and small. Piscataquis County, Knox County, Cumberland County, York County, and Aroostook County. You have it all over the state, but only 10% of them have opted in. So that tells you how these towns are being very selective, and some are watching how they want to do this.
I think some of your folks down in Hancock County have not opted in, if I'm right.
I'm pretty sure that right now, and again, don't quote me on this because it's a fluid thing, but I think the only one that's opted in is Southwest Harbor, okay. Which is interesting because it's Southwest Harbor. I used to live in Northeast. And Southwest and Northeast are sleepy little towns. You just never think of those being the trailblazers. But Southwest came in. I think there's one store there. I think it's a pretty small store, and they're a great store. I've been there. They're great people. And it's a really cool thing for the island to have that.
But the others haven't opted in yet, even Bar Harbor.
Bar Harbor's talking about it.
Yeah.
But I used to live in Bar Harbor. And Bar Harbor is Bar Harbor. And it's a great town, and I love it to death. And it was some of the best years of my life there. But they're really, really tough about how they decide to have people come in. I'm not saying they're parochial or insular. What I'm saying is that they're very selective, and they're very, and this is across the state. Hancock County is not just the island either. You go across the bridge, and you got Trenton. Trenton might be in, but Trenton, you got Ellsworth. Ellsworth, I know that there's discussions about it. So that all over the place. Penobscot County is starting to kind of grasp on. Bangor was an early adopter. Brewer's now in.
So you think there's more and more the towns are going to come in?
I think so. I think they were looking to see how others were succeeding. Look, there's an opportunity here. There's no revenue share with the state. And I know that that's a challenging thing for some of these municipalities to say that they can't share in the tax revenue. I think that that'll probably end up coming. I'm not a legislator. I'm a businessman. I don't know what the legislator's thinking, so I can't, again, don't quote me on that. I think that there will be something down the road. But look, we're in Elliott. We're in Elliott right on the southern border, right? And we're a town of 6,000 people. And of the 130 employees that work for our company, I think that I would say that we're probably about 100, maybe just under, maybe just over, that work in the town of Elliott. So 1.5% of the population of Elliott, they're not all Elliott residents, but 1.5% of the population of Elliott works at Sweet Dirt, or equivalent of, right? That's a pretty cool thing. And our taxes went up by 4 or 5-fold this year because we built a greenhouse that was on a lot that didn't have a greenhouse on it before.
So where you have greenhouse operations, do you have trouble with any of the towns, any resistance, any? No,
we have a great partnership with the town. A lot of the folks that started this company are locally. They know the town. Hughes and Kristen, who I mentioned earlier, he was a resident of the town for years. He had a great relationship with the town, and Elliott came in early. And we had a very collaborative relationship. It was, let's learn this thing together. We went to the city staff. We joined the cannabis communications community. We did all the things that, a community does together to try to do something together. And that was really exciting. And we did things very much right. We did them compliant. We listened to the town. They listened to us. We had great collaborative discussions. We didn't always agree, but we came to understand each other. Our state rep down there, outstanding state rep, Michelle Meyer. I'm going to give her a plug here. She was involved with us working with the town. It was really great, really fun. Like I said, I was in high tech for years, and that's not an industry where you get this kind of local collaboration. It's fun.
Were there any things you would do differently? Any cautions that you have going forward? Anything that?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of things I do differently, but I'm happy the way that things turned out. I would caution anybody getting into this industry, be aware that the ground does move under your feet on a daily basis. There are a lot of challenges. Federally, it's not a legally recognized product. So capital is really, really difficult to come by. You can't go down to your local bank and get a line of credit.
You've had to use private capital to...
We've had to use private debt, use private equity. We have some investors. Yes, yeah, we do. And, kept it local.
Do you think that will change? I mean, are the feds
certainly.
gonna?
Yeah, I do. I just don't know
along with
when.
this?
I mean, look, there's a bill in that has been in the Senate and in the House, the Safe Banking Act, that everybody in this industry is waiting for that to pass, and that would give the cannabis industry access to capital. And here's what I don't get: this crosses party lines. This sat in the Senate before the 2020 election, when there was the Democratic takeover. There was a Republican Senate, and again, I'm not talking about this from a political standpoint. There was a senator from Idaho that would not allow it to leave his committee, and so it never saw the Senate floor. It would pass in the House with flying colors, regardless of who was running the House. And now that it sits in the Senate, it's still, and with a blue Senate, it still hasn't come out. I don't know why. I'm not that learned in senatorial politics as to why. But here's the problem with it not passing. It doesn't help the small business owner. If you don't allow for this to happen, with people to get regular access to regular capital, you're not going to let the small guy in. We're a small guy. We've had some success, but we're a small guy. We happen to get some lucky. We happen to get lucky with some of the moves we made. But, capital continues to be a challenge constantly in this industry. And it's an industry that is very, very heavy on capital needs. You go set up a store, you go set up a grow, you go set up manufacturing. The security needs that the state requires, and I'm not suggesting that that's a bad thing, but the security need that the state requires are incredibly, incredibly capital intensive. That's a great thing, because that means they're doing the right things by the constituents of the state of Maine and those who come to visit, to make sure that they're safe and that they're healthy from a testing standpoint. I appreciate and I concur with all of the direction that OMP has taken this, but it's capital intensive, and you can't get access to capital. That's not a good recipe for getting in the small.
So there's a lot of small, business owners potentially who can't get into it for that reason.
And look, there's a lot of small business owners that are playing in it, but they're finding challenges that they shouldn't have to deal with. They should not have to deal with lack of access to capital. Shouldn't. And you know what? It's the Senate of the United States, so it's a lot bigger than me, but shame on them.
For a lot of reasons.
Yeah, shame on them for not giving a very legitimate industry that is creating tens, if not hundreds of thousands of jobs across. If our company created that many jobs in 1 year across the country, in the 30-something states that have medicinal and the 20-something states that have adult use, and the billions of dollars that is being spent in this industry, you can't tell me that doesn't equal good opportunity for municipalities from a taxation standpoint and jobs, and then all the other things that go along with it. Look, we're talking about grow, and we're talking about manufacturing, but we're mostly talking about retail here, right? Well, think about all the jobs that we've created, the people that don't work for this company. The people that went to the walk-in and built it out for us. The construction, the HVAC, the plumbing, the electrical. And that happens at every stretch, in every step of the vertical integration of the process. The jobs are not just the 130 that Sweet Dirt created. It's every job around it.
Would you imagine how many people are employed, do you think, statewide in the industry?
Oh boy, that's a great question, and I wish I knew the answer. Look, I think, from a store standpoint, we're just hovering around 60-ish. There are a lot of grows that are being built out. There are a lot of grows that are actually been built out and they have their licensing. But if we're 100, there's thousands. There's thousands, and that's just an adult use.
So what do you see, besides the things that you've mentioned, the biggest obstacles going forward, and what do you see happening in the next year or two in this industry?
It's a great question. I think one of the biggest obstacles for the industry is also one of the biggest opportunities. Look, this is a nascent industry that has a past. It's not like it's a brand new industry like the internet would have been 30 years ago that didn't have a past. This industry has a past, and it's got a little bit of a checker past. Not a checker past that it deserves. There was zero reason why this industry that should deserve the past that it had. It was political, and it didn't deserve it. But there is a past. People understand the product, they know the product. But there's also, because of that, there might be fear around the product, there might be preconceived notions around the product. But one of the things that I'm seeing, and I saw it by working the door in Portland, I see it by talking to family, I see it because we are creating jobs, we're creating tax revenue, and people are doing this right. People in the state take this industry seriously. My compatriots in the industry are all doing it right. And they're doing it, and they're having success, and that rising tide absolutely lifts all boats. And because of that, the challenge that we face, the normalization of the industry, is actually an opportunity that we're solving right now. And when we do that, the more people that come into the fold, the more people that realize that this isn't just some sort of shady industry. It's a job creator for your neighbor, for your family. Well,
Jim, this has been terrific, and thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck.
It is my pleasure. Can we do this for a couple
businesses.
hours next time?
We could have. We
All right.
definitely could have.
Thanks, Marion.
Yep.